Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager number 1752 4x4 2D spring hinge. Let's dissect that part number. 1752 means it's a Hager full mortise spring hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves there that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're intended to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. 1752 also means that it is a non-template pattern screw hole with a 5/8 radius. Okay, this is indeed a 4x4 hinge. Okay, we've got our tape measure here. 4x4. The height is the first dimension on a hinge like this. Sorry. So you'd say that it's 4-inch tall and then 4-inch wide. Okay. The 2D means brass dichromate, which is a corrosion-resistant finish that looks very much like a satin brass. It is not satin brass because satin brass would not, feature this lack of complete uniformity that you can see on the camera here. This is a coating. However, the 2D finish, or the brass dichromate, is extremely common to see on residential doors, garage doors, attached garage doors where the door has to be self-closing because it carries a fire rating, exterior, front, back doors of homes. So it's used in those applications that it can be exposed to a bit of the exterior elements, and still is a somewhat uniform, marginally attractive finish without bearing the cost of it being an actual US 4 or satin brass or any other sort of more architecturally pleasing finish. The thickness of the leaf is 97 thousandths, and that is extremely common and typical for a spring hinge like this in a 4x4 size. Setting the tension on these is explained in the installation instructions below this video, but let's first move to the template. The template link shows everything important dimensionally about the hinge, not only the size that we've already covered, but the location of the screw holes. So if you're not sure if this pattern of screw holes, some people call it zigzag, etc., if you're not sure if it's correct, refer to the template and measure it and compare it, measure yours and compare it to the template to make sure to eliminate any guesswork whether or not this is the correct hinge. You can see the different part numbers down below the technical drawing of the hinge in terms of 1750, 1751, 1752, and 1754. Those are the sister products to this, where the corner, forgive me, the corner treatment changes. Square corner, quarter-inch radius, 5/8 radius, and then one leaf square, and then one leaf 5/8, which is not uncommon either. Now, setting the tension on this hinge is really simple. But before we talk about how to do that, let's talk about how many hinges you need. There's a chart below this video where Hager recommends if you've got a 45-pound door, go with one spring hinge and 2 butt hinges. Up to 70 pounds, 2 spring hinges and 1 butt hinge. Or 90 pounds, go with all 3 spring hinges. Now, I'm a fan of being very conservative with the spring hinges. First of all, they're relatively inexpensive, compared against the fact that you will get a more predictable, controllable sort of operation out of the door if you have spring power on reserve, so to speak. What I have found is if there's 1 spring hinge, and there really should be 2, is that the door is not going to operate as well as you might like it to. Meaning, you'll have to set the tension on the spring so high just in order to get the door moving quick enough so that it gets to the few last degrees of the opening and to still latch the door, that it's unpredictable, that is going to work reliably all the time. Here's what I mean. In my experience, having had to set these, reset them, maintain them, is that the stored energy in a spring out here is okay. You can get the door moving if you set a high enough tension on the spring, sure, you'll get the door moving. But there's so much little energy still stored the last few degrees of the opening Keep in mind the door has had to overcome all the air resistance, the weight of the door, and then the friction of the latch bolt as it hits the strike plate. That one spring hinge, when you should have two, or two when you should have three, you'll find yourself in a situation of having to get the door to move so quickly where it's, you could say that it's dangerous, I suppose, even though I don't think that spring hinges should be used when a hydraulic closer should be used. But you'll be able to get a situation where you're either slamming the door constantly, okay, or there's not enough oomph, stored energy, so to speak, to get it to overcome the latch to secure itself into the frame properly. And if you're using a spring hinge, that could mean that the door is fire rated to begin with, and fire rating requires self-closing and self-latching. And the spring hinge helps do the self-closer, but if it's not getting it to self-latch, then you do not have a fire rated opening, is the bottom line. You can mix and match this with typical butt hinges because the axis of pivoting is compatible with typical 4x4 hinges. But if you're putting yourself out there in a point where you have to set the tension so high to get the door moving just close enough, just to get it to close, you really need to go with more spring hinges. Maybe not necessarily 3. But let's face it, if it's a solid core door in a home, the door is not going to be a 45-pound door, and it's not going to be a 70-pound door. It's probably going to be heavier than that, or it very much could be. Typical wood doors, I think, are about 7 pounds per square foot, maybe 6.5. So let's say you had a 3 foot by 6 foot 8, roughly saying we've got 20 square feet. The door is going to be 90 pounds easily. So spring hinges. I think of it as a tugboat. A tugboat doesn't go very fast, but it can pull a lot of weight. Okay, and I find that my experience of having ample stored energy in the springs at the very end allows me to get the door to latch properly, okay, and still have enough torque so that it can overcome wind resistance. Changing of seasons where you'll have windows open, back doors open to buildings, your home, you want it to close, you don't want it to slam, etc., etc. Okay, it does include screws and a complementary finish, all wood screws. Now, setting of the tension. You're going to get a tension rod. Well, this is an Allen wrench, but serves as a tension rod. And a tension pin. You only need one per hinge. So that tension is set with the tension collar pointed up. And this can be used for either left-hand or right-hand doors. Okay. And you're going to want to insert your tension rod, which is an Allen wrench, into the seat in the top. That's the top because the bottom doesn't have one, and plus it's got a hole in the face. Rotate that clockwise. And as I do that, you can see I reveal additional holes. And it's, of course, into one of those additional holes that you would insert the tension pin. And that's how you hold the tension on the spring. And that's covered in the link to the instructions below this video as well. This hinge is available from Hager in several different finishes, lots of them, etc. And I'm also seeing, their chart for the how many hinges to use is also on that page as well. Hager is a full-line manufacturer of all things hinge-related, not only residential hinges like this, but commercial, architectural hinges. It's their namesake, Hager Hinge. They are a comprehensive manufacturer of all things hinge-related, and their name is synonymous with hinges. But not only hinges, lock sets, door closers, exit devices, trim and auxiliary hardware, sliding door hardware, weather stripping, and many other things. Continuous hinges under the Rotan brand name. Any questions on the Hager number 1752 4x4 US 2D single acting spring hinge or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.